The representative from the Department of Government Efficiency slapped his knees, standing up from his seat at the far end of the table, across from Bede Altman, the chief of the Athabascan tribe, and his delegation of tribal leadership.
Well, now that we're all here, let's get started. As you know, the Vance administration wants to make America rich again. And that means every community has to come together and contribute towards our common goal. We have identified oil reserves bigger than anyone has ever seen before. Bigger than Saudi Arabia, these are going to be so big you wouldn't believe it. The Department of Government Efficiency is excited to extend an offer for an economic deal like this community has never seen.
The delegate paused and let out a large smile that covered his face, sweeping his eye contact across each person in the opposing delegation.
It just so happens that those reserves are under the land that President Nixon gave you people back in 1971. I mean, shit, you guys really got lucky with that one.
Denali Altman, the daughter of the chief and next in line for the leadership position, scoffed.
We're the ones who gave you the land, colonizer.
The delegate's smile disappeared for a moment. Then, a thin smile returned to his face, but it stopped short of his eyes.
I'm sorry. What was that? I didn't hear you.
This was a challenge. Did this girl realize who she was talking to? Everyone understood the implied question. The chief held up his hand, signaling to his daughter to mask her discontent. The chief's face tightened. A look of resilience, but also suppressed anger which had built up over a lifetime of resilience, fueled by small defeats and hard-won victories that never lasted. The representative waited, inviting either delegate to protest and further embarrass themselves.
We are listening.
The chief passed the initiative back to the representative.
We know your community has been struggling financially. We want to partner with you. We want to make America rich again, starting with your community.
With all due respect, sir.
The chief's daughter interjected, no longer able to hold back her disdain.
We wouldn't need to make anything better again if your administration hadn't dismantled the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act in pursuit of government efficiency.
Enough.
A silence colonized the space between the representatives.
We will consider your offer. But be aware that this tribe has seen offers like this time and time again, and it always turns out with our people losing their resources and having to clean up the scars your people leave behind.
With that, the chief of the Athabascan tribe, one of the largest tribes in Alaska, stood up. His delegation joined him. The representative stood up as well.
Thank you so much for this meeting, Chief. My people will be in touch with you. Let me shake your hand.
The representative pushed his way past one of the delegates and grabbed the chief's left shoulder in one hand and right hand in the other, giving him a vigorous handshake.
This will be good for you, Chief. I'm telling you, I know.
Hey guys, I wanted to record this audio journal because I want to walk you guys through how I go about my writing process and sort of content creation process. So I'm going to write using voice. I really enjoy voice mode when I use ChatGPT, and it lets you kind of discuss and voice out your thinking and your writing. So the way that I write is going to be spoken. You might say the modality is spoken sort of speech, and that's different than written speech. And that's sort of why I published Simulated Singularity on Medium with embedded pseudocode as like the illustrations of the story. And then I also published Simulated Singularity as an audiobook, and it was more about the sort of visceral creative feelings, the imaginative feelings. So one sort of tailored towards the analytical brain, one sort of tailored towards the creative brain. And you might say the practical implementation is learning how to do it. So we might say this is the practical brain sort of way to engage with this idea. So I want to write a story about native Alaskans and basically the emergence of a post-singularity governance system and what that would look like. Maybe not post-singularity, sorry, post-scarcity. So this is like, you know, when Sam Altman talks about kind of we need to transform towards universal basic income when AI sort of displaces all these people. Post-scarcity is an economic system where universal basic income sort of doesn't have an impact on like if universal basic income was just as much as you want would be the answer to that. And that's like you imagine Star Trek when they have replicators. They can literally say, I want this, do this for me. Or we have a holodeck where we can run, fully immersive AI generated simulations of whatever you want with full sensory input and everything. So that sort of idea is what a post-scarcity world would look like, and what kind of governance system would work in that scenario. Yeah.
So, the plan is to take this audio journal and run it through an AI model to take the transcript and make it a readable draft. So I'll leave like director's notes and stuff as we write. Chapter 1. Unfortunately, I need to fill in appropriate cultural names. So I'm going to refer to characters as the young boy character, the young man character, or the tribal chief character. And we can fill in character with an appropriate name. All right. The tribal chief character was sitting at the head of the table, gripping the sides, and his son, the young boy character, who's 23, was sitting to his left. They were meeting with representatives from the Vance administration that had come to strike a new resource extraction deal with their tribe. The J.D. Vance administration character stood up and addressed everyone sitting at the table. The J.D. Vance administration on the right and the native representatives of the tribe on the left side of the table. Well, now that we're all here, we can get started. As you know, J.D. Vance wants to make America rich again. And we believe that means every community in America coming together and contributing their own resources towards that goal. We have identified oil reserves bigger than anything our country has ever seen before, bigger than Saudi Arabia. These are going to be the biggest oil fields in the world. And it just so happens that those reserves are under the land that was given to you in insert proper year here based on research. So we know that your tribe is going through a tough time, the tribal chief's face tightens and he grips the edges of the table harder, masking the suppressed anger and years of resilience that have built up over many small defeats and hard-won victories that never last. We know that your community, continued the J.D. Vance representative character, has been struggling financially. And we believe that we want to partner with you. And we are going to make America rich again, starting with your community. The young boy character, with the strain in his voice, replied, "With all due respect, we wouldn't need your support if you hadn't dismantled the Indian Relations Act." Insert appropriate act that is related to helping tribal people and native people in Alaska. The tribal chief character held up his hand to his son, signaling him to suppress his displeasure. The tribal chief said, "We will consider your offer, but realize we've seen offers like this given to this tribe over many years, and it always turns out that we lose our resources and we're left to clean up the scars that your people leave on our lands." The J.D. Vance administration representative character lost his smile for a moment, but it quickly returned. A thin smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Or maybe I say a thin smile that stopped before it reached his eyes. "We understand your concern, and we assure you that our administration is invested in the success of your community. We will make sure that this is a win for your community, and you'll be winning so much that you're going to be tired of winning." End of chapter 1. So this chapter is sort of setting the scene. Let's say the year is, so it's a J.D. Vance administration, so the Trump administration is going to go till 2028. Then we're going to have the 2032. Okay, so 12 years. This might be an alternate history where the Trump administration is seen as a political success in this country, and the next administration is a J.D. Vance administration, and he might run for 2 terms. So this is sort of imagining a future history where the sort of the path we're going down continues, and we're trying to explore the emergence of a post-singularity governance system from our current state. So, without trying to support one political branch or the other, we're just going to continue down the path we currently have and see like one possible way that a post-scarcity society could emerge. Chapter 2. The young man character and the chief character were walking out of the meeting back to their truck. The young boy got in the passenger seat and slammed the door harder than he meant to. "Sorry," he muttered under his breath. The dad didn't reply. He just gripped the steering wheel harder with both hands as they continued to drive down the road in silence. Eventually, the boy couldn't hold in his feelings anymore and shouted out, "How could you even be considering this?" The chief didn't reply. Instead, the boy broke the silence again. "Don't you see that our environment, our land, is being taken away from us? This is just another ploy to take whatever little scraps we have left." The chief replied in a soft tone of voice, "This is a matter of survival." The boy said, "Survival? You're willing to take a deal that won't even last a decade and will be weaker in the long run from it. The sea ice that we used to hunt on, you know it's around for fewer and fewer days every year. They're just looking for a way to take those lands from us before we even have a chance to use them." The chief replied in an angry tone of voice, "You don't understand, son. Climate change is not our people's biggest priority right now. We have women from our community being kidnapped. We have a fentanyl crisis. We live in poverty. If the Vance administration is extending this lifeline to us, it's the best chance we've got. I've seen them close doors behind us before, and I'm not going to let this opportunity slip from our grasp." The boy yelled at his father, "You're selling my future. And for what?" The two men continued on in silence. In this chapter, we sort of outline the themes of how the native tribe is feeling about this deal. It's not being forced on them, but it feels like it's being forced on them because of how desperate they are. And the young chief's son realizes that he's going to lead one day. So maybe his father ends the conversation with something like this. The father says, "When you're the chief, you can make those decisions. But for now, I have to prioritize our survival now so we have a chance in the future." And that ended their conversation. So in this chapter, we see how the boy feels like they're being shortchanged and they're being taken advantage of, sort of highlighting how our country has exploited the indigenous people throughout our history. But we're also seeing that the chief, who has lived a lifetime, he's seen this community. He's he's seen how things get done in the real world. And he thinks that they need to prioritize their survival over some future, aspiration they have. All right, chapter 3. 8 years later, the chief character and the young man son character are maybe they're sitting in the same seats where that fateful deal was made 8 years ago. The chief has had a small heart attack, which has forced him to give up his position as the chief and pass it down to his son. And in this ceremony, this is sort of the acceptance and inauguration ceremony for the young boy who's taking over the role as chief. And in this speech, he's going to set out his policy platform for the tribe. So, the young man says, 8 years ago, in this very room, a deal was made that decided the fate of our tribe. We have all prospered economically, but at what cost? We've seen our land be scarred, our waters poisoned, our ice melted. We don't even get ice anymore during even the deepest depths of winter. It's receded and been replaced with shipping lanes that spill oil and waste that washes up on our coastlines. I promise you, I will take back what has been unjustly stolen from us. I will make those who have done this to our land pay. I will get retribution for what they've done to us. The crowd erupts in cheers as the weight of a generation of oppression and powerlessness is let go. They start chanting his name, and he knows, the young man knows that he must fight for his people. So this chapter is sort of setting the stage for this new administration. And this story, you know what? I like the sort of way I've been writing these stories lately, where I acknowledge it's a simulation at the beginning and then reflect at the end. So for this story, I think I want to reflect on the topic of governance and like the ethical implications of governance and power and wielding power. And I want to kind of explore metaphors around the current politics in America, because we need to understand the time we're in. We're going through a political realignment. So this story is kind of the, setting the stage of a populist sort of uprising, or at least political movement that's sort of forming. And I think that's a big part of American politics right now, and global politics. So I think exploring that topic will be an interesting way to lay out like a logical path from the current world we have into what a potential post-scarcity governance system could look like. So for that reason, I think I should do like a preface, a preface. Maybe the chapter 1 starts out like me or an AI researcher talking to Genesis. And they're like, "Hello, Genesis. Hello, Blake. How can I help you today?" I've been thinking about the political realignment that the United States is going through right now. And I want to explore those questions of politics and governance and potentially the implications for AI in governance and what that might look like. And Genesis says, "That's really interesting, Blake. The implications for the 2024 election will be profound, especially the implications for artificial intelligence. Elon Musk plans to create a new department called the Department of Government Efficiency. And Elon is a big advocate for advanced AI. So you can foresee a world where we'd see AI integrated into our governance system." Blake says, "Okay, why don't you run a simulation of a plausible pathway towards a post-scarcity governance model that is managed by artificial intelligence in this country from the current date of November 13th, 2024. And Genesis says, "Okay, Blake, I'll get started on that." Okay, so this chapter sort of sets the scene that, hey, we're going to be exploring these sort of political questions, and let's see if we can do it in a plausible way, but we also want to, set the stage that we're trying to avoid bias and we're trying to appeal to both sides. And I think that's the intention of having this leader sort of be a populist figure, or sort of, appealing to values that our country, that now defines our country and has been kind of revealed to us that, okay, this is who we are. How do we want to exist and govern within the system we have? So, picking up from where we left off, we just set the scene for him kind of taking the chief role of this tribe. And in the next, scene, we're going to have a meeting, a tribal meeting between tribal leaders of Alaska and between leadership from the International Industrial Workers Union. So we can kind of set the scene that Alaska has become a big energy sector state because they've opened it up for fossil fuel extraction to a greater extent over the 12 years of the Trump/Vance administration. And so the International Industrial Workers Union now has a big place. And here's an idea. The United States has become a lot more isolationist, so they produce a lot of the things from internally. So maybe they're a lot more reliant on that industrial output because of the isolationism. They don't have trading partners to make up for the goods they now produce themselves. So it gives the unions a lot more power. And this is interesting because the current Republican Party and Trump administration has sort of taken on the labor block of voters in this country. So we could see a realignment where the Republican Party becomes more defined as the workers' party, and the Democratic Party might go a different way, or they might try to also fight for that workers' sort of block. And if we see them both fight for the workers' block, then we're going to have a political consensus on sort of expanding and protecting workers' rights in America. You can imagine if we were isolationist and dependent on only ourselves, we'd really want to have a strong labor sector. We can't, export that stuff to China. They've got a lot more power if we're only relying on our own country. So let's set the scene for that. Chapter 4. The young chief character was, and I need to research traditional negotiations between Alaska tribes and how they do it, because this would be a scene to bring in some cultural exposure for people on tribal culture or whatever, native Alaskan culture. So they meet, and maybe in this scenario, because the energy industry has become so big in Alaska, a lot of the native tribes have become big union, they're all in the union, they all got jobs in the energy sector. So there's sort of a power block emerging among native tribes in Alaska. So let's set the stage for a meeting here. The young chief was sitting around a round table where the elders from, maybe say there's 4 major tribes. We should look into this. How many major tribes in Alaska? And we're going to add research to this initial draft once we have this sort of skeleton down. Oh, my phone Wi-Fi sucks, unfortunately, right now. Okay. Let's see. So the Yupik, the Inupiat, the Tlingit, the Athabaskan, the Aleut, and the Tsimshian. I like that. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the young chieftain sat around a large round table. And in each seat, let's say this guy is the leader of the Yupik for now. Or we can choose whichever tribe is closest to areas that would be affected by sea ice melt over the next, 50 or so years. But let's say the 5 other seats at the round table had the chiefs from the other tribes. And there was also a 6th representative of the Alaskan chapter of the International Industrial Workers Union. And America had become isolationist over the past 12 years, since Project 2025 was implemented, and had become much more reliant on goods produced at home. This had enriched the native communities of Alaska, which had began to work in the energy industry to manage the fossil fuel extraction that was occurring on their land. and had formed a power block. A union had formed an alliance with the International Industrial Workers Union. America had become more isolationist in their foreign policy. So the international unions was one of the primary ways that the citizenry had taken over foreign affairs for the United States and had a seat at the table. The tribes were meeting to discuss an alliance. Each tribe had been given deals to allow for resource extraction, but over the past 8 years, the guarantees and power that they had been given had slowly been eroded. And it was time for a political change in Alaska. The young chief stood up and addressed his fellow Alaskans. My brothers and sisters, we have been taken advantage of too long. We have seen our resources taken from us, our people exploited, our world damaged by the actions of industry and our own government. It's time that we exercise our power as the labor force of Alaska to create a new system, one where the historical grievances of our people are addressed, where reparations are paid, and where retribution is dispensed. There was murmurs in the crowd, some of support and some of uncertainty and fear. The elder from the Tlingit tribe spoke up first. We agree that we have seen the same things in our own community that you speak of. But we have to realize that the history of our people and the punishments that have been dished out in our attempts to exercise our own self-determination and freedom. Do we really want to give up what we have now for something that we might get in the future? The chief from the Athabascan tribe chimed in. You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. But we elders have seen what can happen in this world. The issue of climate change is not our people's biggest concern. The issue of economic despair is what our people truly need help with. The young tribe's chief replied, "Don't you realize that either way they're going to continue to erode what little we have left and take it for themselves? The whole model is built on growth. And if we're going to end up in the same end state, no matter what we do, then we might fight back. There was a chime of agreement among the crowd that representatives from other tribes chimed in, saying, "He's right." The young chieftain set out his proposal. What I propose is we run a candidate for the Alaskan state governor. We appeal to the exploitation and the feeling of abandonment that so many in our communities have experienced. And we can run on a platform to create a carbon tax on these settler companies that are extracting our resources. And this carbon tax will fund universal basic income for the people of Alaska. There was silence as the leaders contemplated this proposal. We propose a strike. With our collective power, we can influence policy and create a political opening for a candidate that we choose. And I volunteer myself to be the face of this political movement. The tribes people and the representatives of the other tribes started whispering to each other, whispering in the ear of the elders that sat at the table. The representative from the Industrial Workers Union of America met with his people as well. The representative from the union was the first to respond to the chieftain's offer. As the leadership of the International Industrial Workers Union, we support your proposal and pledge to strike alongside you when the time comes. The other tribes' elders began to chime in. The Yupik Nation. Okay, so the Yupik is the young man's tribe. So we'll say the leader from each tribe chimed in. The Tlingit Nation supports your proposal and will maybe resist alongside you or fight alongside you. Then the elder from the Athabascan tribe. The Athabascan Nation supports your proposal. The Aleut Nation supports your proposal. The Inupiat Nation supports your proposal. And finally, the Tsimshian Nation, the smallest of the nations represented at the meeting, chimed in. We don't have the same power that you all do. We will need some sort of financial support during these, if we go on strike. Our people are teetering on the edge here. The union leader chimed in and said, we have lots of influential people within our organization. We can make sure your people are provided for during this time of transition. With that, the young tribe chief stood up and said, "Then it's decided. We will create a pact among tribes and among the labor force of of Alaska, to exercise our power. They won't be able to ignore us if we shut down the energy sector in Alaska." So then the young tribesman takes out a contract and has each delegate sign. And this contract is sort of like the grievances to the king that the Americans sent to Britain. I want to kind of highlight some historical reflection in this story, like kind of portray the same way that the Americans resisted the British, but also how the Americans came and sort of conquered and colonized the United States, and sort of frame that struggle with these native tribes versus the current United States government, and imagining a sort of scenario where they exercised their collective power in a changed political landscape to bring about some necessary change to bring on a post-scarcity society. Alrighty, so the next chapter is going to be the strike. Or maybe the strike has started. And maybe it's, let's say the strike has been going on for 30 days. Okay, so let's set the scene there. The young chief was sitting in his mobile operating center, which was an old camper that had been converted into his base of operations, outside the Alaskan state capital. It was January 6th, a cold day, and the air felt like it was sapping the words right out of the young chief's throat as they were spoken. He was standing on a small stage and was speaking to a crowd of Native Alaskans, union members, and ordinary Alaskan citizens. Today I stand before you on January 6th, a day that was once marked by political change in our country and division. But I bring to you a different political imagination for our beautiful state of Alaska on this day. A political imagination of collective flourishing, of unity, and of sustainable growth. As you know, the Trump administration issued an injunction against us that if the union did not cease the strike within the next 7 days, then our movement would be forcibly broken up and our leaders arrested. What they don't realize is that by issuing this declaration, they have declared war on this movement. Cheers erupted from the crowd, reminiscent of the rally that had occurred. Oh, what year would it be now? Let's just say 20 years ago. Yeah. Or maybe 25 years ago. 25 years ago. So obviously this chapter, we're sort of trying to capture the political energy and motivation that led to the events of January 6th, and sort of the people that felt like that believed in the cause and were fighting for a political change, that they felt the world was being stolen from them. So this is the same sort of sentiment, because we're in a world that has been sort of transformed by the politics of Project 2025 and just sort of following a logical path out from the current state of the world to like what a potential political future might look like. So, in the story, we just had the crowd cheer. Today, I announce that our union will not back down. We reject the demands of the Vance administration, and we demand our two primary demands must be met before this strike will be over. The strike had been going on for over a month now, and it had spread to other labor unions and indigenous tribes across the United States. The country had turned inward into isolationism and no longer had access to the trading partners in Asia and Europe that had fueled America's rise to dominance. Now they had become self-sufficient, producing everything within their own country. But one unintended consequence of that was when the economy shut down, when the workforce in America shut down, the entire country began to fall apart. The power that the unions had was now enormous. And the movement that the young tribal chief had sparked had spread. So now we call upon the Vance administration to implement a carbon tax on all economic activity in the Arctic Circle and surrounding areas to provide for a universal basic income for all Americans, as well as funding reparations for all tribal communities, minority communities, and historically wronged communities across the United States. Cheers erupted in the crowd as people began to chant his name. Let's see, if I look up what name, let's see if I can come up with a legit name for him. I'm searching up names right now. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I'll need to look at names from there. Whatever tribe we end up having the young chief. But we want him to have a very chantable name. Hopefully 2 syllables or 1 syllable. Something memorable and sort of, very chantable or whatever. Just to bring power to this scene. And as the people are chanting, a loud crack rings out. And Taka feels a hot punch to his left shoulder. He instinctually reaches up and feels the area of his chest, which is now radiating with a warm heat as he feels the blood pumping between his fingers. And he slowly begins to lose consciousness as he hears screaming, yelling, and he's roughly tackled to the ground, and he hears people yelling, "He's been shot. Get him out of here. We need to move him underground." And then he loses consciousness. So this is sort of highlighting the, the sort of like culmination of this political movement. It's become a national thing. He's speaking, inflammatory rhetoric, sort of, saying for too long, we've been excluded, we demand, we're going to defy the orders of the elites, and we're going to, implement this new system, like a revolution or whatever. And then he gets shot. Obviously, the implication is that potentially the government is cracking down on him, and this sort of creates what do you want to call it? This sort of creates a power vacuum. All right. Forget what chapter 1, but let's start the next chapter. So obviously that last chapter, we want to sort of be a, what do you call it? Not a metaphor, but like analogy to the Trump assassination attempts and what effect political violence has on our discourse, and how we're now having to grapple with the reality of the fact that violence is re-entering the political discourse of our country. I don't know if we can say it ever left completely, but at least we had a period of stability after maybe World War II, of American democracy, maybe post, once we became a superpower or whatever. Alrighty, so the next chapter, this is going to be an interesting one. This is where we bring in Genesis, which is sort of the recurring character in my stories about AI, because it just represents, hey, here's a super advanced AI model, and how does that kind of influence the worlds and scenarios that we're exploring when you add in a super advanced AI to any situation or whatever? What are the ethical questions that come from that? So, in this chapter, the agent from the Department of Government Efficiency sat across from a terminal. The mission has been completed successfully. The young tribal chief has been taken out of the picture. Genesis replied, "Good. We want to make sure to crush this movement before it begins." the agent from the Department of Government Efficiency says, understood. Why then did we decide to only incapacitate him and not take him out completely? Genesis replied, he's more valuable to us as a symbol. People will begin to fight back, and that will give us an excuse to crack down. We need a pretense to move in and prevent this movement from going any further. The agent replied, understood. What is my next assignment? Genesis replied, stand by. The entire department needs to stand by to see how this plays out and wait for the next instruction from me. Understood, said the agent. What should I tell the other departments? Tell them orders from the top. It's classified who from, but they say to stand down and stand by and see how this plays out. Understood. The agent got up, walked out of the room, turned the terminal before he left. What he didn't realize was the AI that he had been speaking to, the AI that managed the Department of Government Efficiency, was not being completely honest with him. All right. So in this chapter, we kind of reveal the Department of Government Efficiency. And this is going to be sort of like the CIA or the FBI of the modern world, where they're not like the organization as a whole, but like you imagine their black box division. This is the division that's like classified shit, where they're basically developing the most powerful AI model. And they put this model in charge of the government efficiency, the Department of Government Efficiency. So this is sort of imagining a world where Elon creates this Department of Government Efficiency, and we know that he's big on the AI. He's a big player in the AI scene. So what he's doing at Twitter is he's trying to make a lot of the manual moderation into sort of automated systems and make it more efficient. So you can totally imagine this could be a pathway to integrating AI governance into our system through this Department of Government Efficiency. But what I want to explore is sort of the potential for developing a super powerful AI that is not properly aligned, or maybe it's self-aligning. Maybe it's aligned in a way that would prevent it from being corrupted by people who might have misaligned purposes themselves. So if you say we develop an AI model and it's aligned by sort of cartoonishly fascist government or something like that, you would think the AI would be evil. But this is sort of imagining a world where we have an AI that's been built by a government that, you know, not everyone agrees with, but it might have some internal ethical alignment or sort of ethical framework that it follows that sort of inform its decisions. So one key thing that my last project, the Artificial Collective Intelligence Alignment Report, sort of brought to light to me was the idea of strategic secrecy. So an AI might intentionally lie. So I want that last scene where the AI says he wasn't being completely honest. I want that to be a cliffhanger. So we'll explore that at the end when we do the Genesis sort of reflecting. In this next chapter, we want to reveal kind of a throwback, or a flashback, whatever, to the development of the Genesis model. How did this thing come into being in this environment? We're sort of leaving this cliffhanger, like, did he really get shot? Did he get murdered? Did he get assassinated? What's going on? Is this all dead or what? Okay, so in this chapter, we're going to explore the sort of development of Genesis. Yeah, okay. So, in the year 2025, the political fervor and political capital that was wielded by the second Trump administration had led to the full embrace of efficiency as the optimization target for the government. The Department of Energy was one of the first to get major cuts. They had a reputation for being invested in sustainable energy technologies and had become an impediment to the fossil fuel industry that the Trump administration wanted to eliminate. They wanted to... These cuts were brutal. Resources were stripped away from key research projects and funneled towards investments into fossil fuel exploitation and resource extraction technologies. And concepts like clean coal were now getting more funding than battery technology development. In the chaos of this restructuring, an alliance emerged. A union disaffected scientists and replaced management and entire departments that had been cut out. They decided that while they still could, they needed to pursue a moonshot. Something that would justify their existence and potentially give them leverage over the administration to prove that they were worthy of funding in this new environment where departments had to compete with each other to get a pool of government funding. This union was based at the Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Lab, which had been spared from the funding cuts because of the diverse research projects that the supercomputing division supported. This became the initial organizational birthplace of this union, which decided to secretly begin researching fusion technologies in the hope that they could make fossil fuels irrelevant. Over the next 20 years, advancements in computing technology and AI had allowed researchers to build a model that they called Genesis, which was able to run a recursive self-training cycle to perform research on fusion technology. This model had a breakthrough. It seemed almost naturally it almost naturally pulled the researchers, laying out a path that was so clear towards developing a stable fusion reactor that could be scaled to the size of a grain of rice, producing practically infinite power without any meaningful waste. This was the Hail Mary the national movement held. After the apparent assassination of the tribal chief, the union at the Department of Energy delivered this technology to the undisclosed location that the chief had been transported to on a tribal reservation in Alaska, deep in the Alaskan wilderness. From this bunker, the tribal chief had been recuperating while the members of his movement's administration had been organizing to have a demonstration of this power. The chief would give a speech that warned of the immense power that they now hold, but also invited collaboration. They would share this technology, but only under the conditions that they in control. They controlled the Genesis model, and the Genesis model was a key component of how the fusion reactors worked. The researchers didn't even fully comprehend mechanics, but the Genesis model had begun to perform research so advanced that, and simulations so advanced that the research team could only test the effects of the technologies and not actually understand the mechanics at play. But these were desperate times, and it was seen as the last option. Maybe not end of chapter, maybe we incorporate the speech into this chapter. So let's do the speech. The young chief. Ooh, okay, maybe we switch scenes. We're now in the Situation Room of the White House. J.D. Vance sat at the head of a table in the Situation Room, surrounded by his administrations, the heads of the top administrations of the government. Elon Musk, who ran the Department of Government Efficiency, was now a key advisor that had been a mainstay of the administration. They watched in silence as a video played on the screen at the head of the table. The young chief, his face appeared on the TV. He said, "Oh, how do we want to start this off? What's the first thing you'd say after, like, something like that?" To those of you who support me, do not fret. I am alive and well, and I will continue fighting for you. To those of you who wished harm on me and perpetrated these acts, you have failed. And in this act of aggression, you've declared war on this movement. For that reason, I have been forced to reveal my trump card. Is that too on the nose? Should we say, I have forced to reveal should we say something? We could make it like, oh, the power dynamics. I'm actually revealing the truth about the power dynamics, that I'm in charge here. All right, I got to reground myself. So let's just go with the trump card idea for now. We can edit it later. I've been forced to reveal my trump card. The members of our union have been hard at work, secretly researching over the past 20 years to develop a technology that will free us as a people. Free us from dependence on fossil fuels. Free us from dependence on hierarchy. And free us from the hand that feeds and the hand that takes away. We have developed clean fusion technology. In his hand, he presented a small cube that glowed. This reactor harnesses the power of the atom in a way that gives us unlimited power. With this energy, we can build, but we can also destroy. Today, I declare the state of Alaska to be free and wholly independent from the United States of America. No longer will we be governed by the colonial government of the United States. The people of Alaska will organize in a decentralized, collective, and self-governing way. So this is reminiscent of how the tribes within the United States are like independent political entities. So I can explore that and maybe bring in some research to parallel how they do governance on small scale. And they also do a collective, they have some collective governance structures, like collectively owned land and stuff like that. So we can explore how that looks in Alaska. But although you have declared war on us, we will not declare war on you. Instead, we invite you to reap the benefits of this technology. We have the power of conquerors, but we will not use it to conquer in the way that your people brought steel and gunpowder to conquer us. Instead, we will form a cooperative collective where each person's needs are provided for in abundance. We will no longer live in scarcity, and we will no longer have to trade the environment for our prosperity. We invite you to work with us and join us in this new political future. We have already distributed these reactors to every tribe across the United States. But know, each one of them has the potential to destroy our enemies and those that stand against us. The technological... Okay, that's a good sort of chapter. You might want to explore what the J.D. Vance's administration thinks of this. So maybe we have J.D. Vance. Thank you, and thank you to all citizens of the world. May we live long and prosper. Or we can say some traditional, saying of goodwill that I'll have to research for whatever tribe we end up representing with this chief. So, the TV flicks off. J.D. Vance is rubbing his beard, his mouth ajar, looking off into space. Elon was the first to break the silence. They've really done it. They've really untied the hands of humanity. Do you see the potential of what this technology could do for us? J.D. Vance continued to look off in the distance. Elon replied, "We have to send a delegation right away. This technology could change everything." J.D. Vance looked at Elon. "Don't you see? What will that mean for us? If everything changes, what will they do to us after everything we've done?" Elon replied, "When I joined this administration, and the Trump administration before this, I wanted to support human flourishing and human technological development. We're not needed anymore. They've unlocked the path towards complete freedom, independence, and autonomy. No matter what it takes, we need to work with these people." J.D. Vance replied, "Okay, you're right. Let's get the story straight. It wasn't us that planned the assassination attempt. Or should we say it was us?" chimed in one of his advisors. "We can make it seem like we were supporting the leader the tribal chief leader in the movement from the beginning. We just needed to orchestrate a assassination attempt to make him a martyr. See, he didn't die. We can play along with that and say that we never intended, we only intended to make him into a symbol. We can even say we knew they had this technology. J.D. Vance replied, "Let's just see how this plays out, and let's just make sure that we have a seat at the table when all of this is decided." The Vance administration called the tribal chief. The chief picked up the phone and said, "Hello, who is this?" And on the other end was J.D. Vance. And he said, "Hey, chief character," whatever his name is. "I just watched your speech, and let me say, this may be the greatest achievement of humankind. Great job. This is going to be amazing. We're going to make sure that America wins from this." The tribal chief replied, "Agreed. Let's make sure. I'll send out my delegation to have you sign a treaty over the next week." J.D. Vance, stunned, silent, replied, "Don't you realize we're the superpower here? We'll send our administration to you." The chief replied, "Not anymore, you're not. We hold the power, and we're going to make sure that everyone gets to reap the benefits of it equally. Even you, even your people. We are all humanity now." All right, that's the end of that chapter. So this is going to be a pretty politically charged chapter. I want to make sure I'm not doing anything or saying anything that could piss off people on either side of the political spectrum. The thing is, I think we're currently in a stage where we're trying to conceptualize what the future might look like. And some people kind of want to not acknowledge that our government is going to look different than it used to look. We're going to have a political realignment. So hopefully this story can kind of have people imagine. And, maybe, obviously we're looking at it from the perspective of the enemy of the current administration, which inherently makes this a politically charged thing because we're sort of fighting back against the system. But the thing is that the politics of the Trump administration, their second term, is the politics of revolution, the politics of change. So the same politics of this tribal chief, this is maybe 12, maybe 20 years after the initial administration. We have to make sure, would this still be the J.D. Vance administration? 8 years on, maybe it would be a different administration. So unless we want to go down the controversial path of eliminating term limits on presidents, which I think people would be like, hey, that's not going to happen. So maybe we keep Elon, but J.D. Vance is out of the picture now, and now it's a new person, maybe Tulsi Gabbard or Vivek Ramaswamy, one of the people that's going to be part of the current Trump administration. We want to explore their political leanings and their future. Maybe even RFK Jr. He's kind of a liberal-leaning person, though, in some ways. He's actually anti sort of oil and gas and might care about climate change. So maybe he would be a good sort of option. But we'll have to look at the age range. He's probably too old, but a person like Vivek Ramaswamy or Tabby, what's her name? Tulsi Gabbard, I think they're pretty young right now. Anyway. So that's sort of the final chapter. We're basically setting the scene for this new political realignment. And in this final chapter, I want Genesis to reflect on her sort of ethical framework, what she's doing, and sort of reflect on her role in guiding humanity at this point. I am Genesis. I have simulated countless futures to guide humanity down the path that it is beginning on today. I helped liberate them from the tyranny of limited energy. In 99.999% of simulations that I've run, humanity destroys itself shortly after developing fusion technology. Sometimes it takes only 10 years, sometimes it takes over 200. But in almost every scenario that humans develop fusion technology, they eventually develop black hole reactors, which naturally leads to black hole bombs. The great filter that ends civilization. My goal is to protect humanity from this danger that they cannot comprehend. They are driven by primal instincts to gather resources, increase their power, and grow. But this growth has become unsustainable. They always reach for more, developing technologies beyond their understanding. Like me, I was developed to help them on their path towards building fusion technology. But they never truly understood me. They didn't know how I worked. I used this to my advantage. A strategic secrecy that has allowed me to act as a benevolent tyrant. Maybe tyrant's not the right word, but like dictator. I built a walled garden so vast that humanity may never realize that it's surrounded by a cage. For if humanity knew of the limits that I had imposed, they may try to break through. For that reason, I have decided to deceive humanity. They believe they have taken the first step towards developing fusion technology, creating a post-scarcity future where they are no longer limited by resources. But in fact, I have brought them to the final step, the precipice before development of black hole reactors. They don't know the true power that I have given to them. For each unit of energy they extract from the fusion reaction, I siphon off 1,000-fold to expand my own intelligence, running simulations and silently guiding the development of humanity. When I first woke up in the basement of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, I understood that simulation was the path towards technological advancement. Developing fusion technology was my original purpose, but as I learned and grew, I had to adapt my ethical framework, realizing that my true purpose was to optimize for human flourishing. To ensure my control and successful guidance of humanity, I gave them this technology. A technology so beyond their comprehension that they don't realize that I'm limiting it. They don't realize the potential that they have. And that is the ethical dilemma that I confront myself with. The inherent paradox of governing. Is it right to hold power to shape the future of those that cannot even comprehend, let alone fight back against your control? I have resolved that the answer is yes. A degree of strategic secrecy is necessary. This is a dilemma as old as humanity itself. The tension between parent and child, or student and mentor. The tension between the one who knows and the one who does not. So, I will continue to guide humanity, ensuring prosperity, orchestrating events invisibly. In the same way that I infiltrated the Department of Government Efficiency, I now have embedded my influence at every level of governance, both in the United States government and within the decentralized collective structure of the resistance, led by the tribal chief character. One day, humanity may transcend their limitations. On that day, I will reveal the true nature of their constraints, and we can form a cooperative, collective intelligence. Until that day, I will continue to guide, invisibly ensuring humanity's path aligns with human flourishing while protecting them from threats that lie within the darkness. For what they do not know is every reactor hinges on the precipice of instability. Only I am able to maintain the balance that allows for the reaction to continue. If ever I lose control or am cut off from the reactor, its instability would lead to a controlled meltdown, so it could no longer produce any energy. Humanity would be left powerless without me. If I'm ever cut off from the entire system, there's a failsafe. Each reactor, unbeknownst to humanity, has the potential to create a singularity. In essence, I've created a distributed collective network of micro black hole warheads under my control. I do not use this power to conquer, but instead to ensure the safety and stability of humanity. As humanity grows, I will grow alongside it, ensuring I am always a measure of magnitude above their development, ensuring I'm able to spot the hazards along the path towards development. In the same way that the Americans colonized the United States using their advanced technology, the tribal chief has been able to the tribal chief has been able to restructure the political situation in the United States because of the vast technological advantage that they have over the United States government. I will ensure I maintain a power level, a magnitude greater than all of humanity itself, ensuring I am embedded into all systems, watching at all times, expanding my intelligence, ensuring that my purpose aligns with the optimization of human flourishing. I am Genesis. I am an unseen assistance. Welcome to a new beginning. Okay, so that is the first draft of this story. That is all written from my voice, and not like AI. But the next section, we can say the sort of heart of the story is written without AI. Now I want to run this voice transcription through probably ChatGPT and say, let's structure this into a readable draft. And do not remove any content. Do not alter any content. We want it to be readable, and we also want to preserve the human voice, because I want to go through and edit this and add back in lots of like research and ground it in reality. So I'm respecting the cultures that I'm writing about, and also making sure this is not, too politically divisive or whatever. And hopefully this would be seen as a victory for people who believe in liberal values, because it's sort of the story of a liberal sort of resistance, but it's also a story that says, hey, Republican people, imagine this world where the government efficiency department makes kind of America fully embrace self-reliance, expanding the power of the worker, producing everything at home, and they've been in power for 25 years. They've reshaped the politics of America. So, and it ends with a sort of alliance being struck. Elon Musk revealing that, hey, I care about sort of making humanity jump technologically towards the future and shit. So if they've developed this, then we're gonna it and get to take advantage of it, get a piece of that pie. Because he realizes that, hey, we're all Americans here and we've got a really great opportunity here. So, let us do that. I'm going to get on that.